Monopolies in America are nothing new. They're about as American as apple pie. But as Scott Galloway points out in his book, The Four, the hidden DNA of Amazon, Apple, Facebook, and Google, these companies have taken monopoly to a whole new level. More Americans have Amazon Prime than voted in the 2020 presidential election. As of 2015, Apple had the most successful year in history, registering 53.4 billion in net profit. China has a population of 1.4 billion. There are 1.3 billion Catholics in the world. Facebook has 2 billion users worldwide, and that number is growing. And as for Google, they have a market cap that is equivalent to the next 8 largest media companies combined. The monopoly guy would be proud. Now, this wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing if we could be sure that these companies had our best interest in mind and were playing by the rules, but they're not. Stealing is a core competency of high-growth tech firms. Since writing this book, the CEOs of Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and Google all testified before Congress, facing questions on censorship, free speech, and monopoly. And even more recently, Facebook has faced a significant amount of scrutiny, which we're going to touch on here shortly. It's not uncommon for you to be talking about something with your friends and then have it inexplicably pop up on your Instagram later that day, even though you didn't search for it. We're all very aware how creepy things have become with Facebook and Google and some of their other competitors, but we seem to be okay with the creepiness in exchange for the convenience. So Facebook and Google definitely take the cake here. They don't pay a dime for our most personal data, our deepest, darkest secrets, our hopes and our dreams, our conversations with our friends and our family. They take it from us, sell it to advertisers, and rake in massive amounts of profit. This is essential to both Facebook and Google's business models. We ask Google anything that's on our mind, and we don't think twice about it. So in the early days, they built this unprecedented, almost godlike trust. Google doesn't advertise on their homepage. They position all of their results as 100% organic, and they clearly denote what results you see that are paid for. The way Google pay-per-click is set up adds to the belief that they're fair and impartial. All of these old entrenched media companies like the New York Times and all of their competitors see Google as a way to get more people onto their website, the electric company for the internet. They gladly allow Google to scrape their content, put their ads in there, make money off those ads, and most importantly, Google is learning what the readers of the New York Times and their competitors like far quicker and far more intricately than the papers themselves. And this became the beginning of the end for legacy media companies. Interestingly enough, Google has danced around calling themselves a media company, opting rather to use the term platform. Now, this is because media companies have some degree of accountability for what they post. Google wanted to pass the buck on that as long as they possibly could. While Google is taking the blood, sweat, and tears of major publications across the US and populating that in their search results, Meta, is doing something very similar, except their content is created by their users and shared by their users. Along with the lack of accountability that comes with being a media company, but not really being a media company, tech companies are historically given significantly higher valuations from investors than media companies are. So we've got two tech giants who basically control the media at this point. Both are profiting off of zero original content, who don't want to call themselves media companies. So when they launched their community feature, Facebook invites companies like Nike, for example, to tell all of their users to join this community and like it on Facebook. Facebook's getting free advertising from that. Then all of a sudden, they turn around and say, hey, Nike, you need to pay us or your posts aren't going to get seen by your community. So Nike spends all of this effort and time and money and marketing dollars to get their users on Facebook, and then Facebook starts charging them to advertise to their own users, their own customers. Crazy. So more recently, Facebook has been in the news for their algorithm. Tristan Harris documentary, The Social Dilemma on Netflix touches on this. Facebook's algorithms were switched in order to intentionally push divisive content, to intentionally create echo chambers. If you're a liberal and you click an article that's left-leaning, you're going to get much more left-leaning content. Not only that, you're going to get content to cause anger and be divisive. That's baked into their algorithm. Calm, reasonable, nuanced content does not get clicks. We want rage, and that is clearly having an effect on our society, not in a good way. How did these four companies come to achieve such market dominance? So the one thing they all have in common is they just swallowed their competition completely. Amazon, when they started out as a bookseller back in the day, their main core competency was selection. If you wanted a book and you couldn't find it in the bookstore, Jeff Bezos wanted it to be available on Amazon.com. In fact, he went above and beyond, spending an inexorbitant amount of money to make sure that he did things that none of his competitors could do. Amazon raised $2.1 billion in capital from investors before making a profit. Years later, when Amazon Marketplace was launched, the core competency of selection expanded. Smaller sellers saw this was a great opportunity. Post your product on Amazon and we'll handle the rest. It seemed like a no-brainer for small businesses. So what Amazon was doing with this was playing into this selection core competency. If you wanted something in any number of product categories, it was going to be available on Amazon. And they didn't have to source the products. It was other businesses that were joining this Amazon marketplace. Now, even better for Amazon was they had access to all the data. So once they saw a product that was doing extremely well, they would just create their own version of the product and put their version of the product at the top of the page, sell it for a little cheaper, and boom, undercut the business that had the product there in the first place. Apple probably had the most unique route to market dominance. They made a very strategic decision to switch from a computer company to a luxury brand. So no doubt, Steve Jobs, once in a lifetime genius, creating four earth-shattering $100 billion product categories with the iPod, iTunes, and the Apple Store, the iPhone, and the iPad. It was their decision to switch from a computer company to a luxury brand that truly made the difference. iPhones became a status symbol. At the time of writing this book, Apple's iPhone accounted for only 18% of smartphones issued worldwide. However, Apple raked in 92% of the industry's profits. That's what being a luxury brand will do. If you go to an upper class neighborhood, everybody has iPhones. If you go to a middle class or a lower class, you see a lot more Androids. That's what Apple's marketing and price point was designed to do. When Apple made the decision to create brick and mortar retail stores with those big glass windows that everybody can see inside. If you're in the Apple Store, you must be somebody. This was laughed at by a lot of investors. The future was online. What are you doing with brick and mortar? But Apple knew exactly what they were doing. They were creating and cementing this image of being a luxury brand. I found Apple to be the least bad acting of these four horsemen. I actually watched that 2020 testimony, some of it, in front of Congress with these four CEOs. And Tim Cook at the time, to me, came off the best. Apple just did not have as much dirt on their hands as these other three companies did. Finally, he outlines some of the other potential fifth horsemen out there and what they're missing to really be on the same level as these four. Those companies include Alibaba, Tesla, Uber, Walmart, Microsoft. Microsoft, by the way, was the original horseman. Airbnb, IBM, Verizon, AT&T, Comcast, and Time Warner. Those last four kind of lumped together. So while these companies seem untouchable now, many other monopolies had that same allure before them and are now completely non-existent or shadows of their former selves. The founder of the next horseman probably sitting in a garage right now with nothing more than a keyboard and a dream. Great read. If you're interested in big tech and the tech industry in general, this is a very interesting book. gets into really the history of a lot of the sectors that these 4 companies operate in, goes into a lot more detail on exactly how they executed their business models and achieved this status that they have today. Great read. Highly recommend it. If you found this video useful, don't forget to hit subscribe. I post new videos every Wednesday. This has been Brian Lee, Lion's Eye Recruiting. Happy hunting.